We always lift up a script or look at it just to see what we got. And most scripts are 90 to 120 pages. So like 67 pages, that's like a pilot for television, a 1-hour pilot.
I think we challenge ourselves, how can we make a horror movie and do it differently?
So it was a very unconventional read. There was maps of the farm in there, there was lots of graphics, but the script had the foundation for an unbelievable story.
It forces us to figure out how we can create that horrible feeling of fear and at the same time not rely on the things that we've relied on in the past. We went out on a limb here.
To read a script that had 2 or 3 minutes of dialogue in the movie was crazy because it worked.
We were in college. The very nascent idea came to us when we decided, man, it'd be really special to do something in the horror space, but just totally quiet and no dialogue. We just didn't know how to make that work. It just felt like a gimmick.
The best movies that work in the horror thriller genre thrive because it's saying something about what it is to be a family or a person or a human being.
It wasn't until several years later, now it could actually be about something.
A single family. A family that has a rift. If we do this right, hopefully we'll get really talented actors on board, but I don't think we ever expected it would end up at the level that it ended up.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Is that okay, or do you want sand?
She said, let me try.
Okay, good. Best. All right, let's do it. All right.
John had just signed on to do Jack Ryan. We were actually FaceTiming with John every day, just getting to know each other. On a fluke, Drew and I said, well, John can play the dad.
And I said, I can't really do genre, I'm too scared. But it was a cool idea, and they said, well, it's about a family that has to be quiet, and you have to figure out why. And I thought, that's one of the best one-liners I've ever heard.
He says, guys, I think the script is really good. I would like to play the dad, and I'm also going to write and direct the movie. And we said, really? And he said, yes, and here's my pitch for what the movie's going to be, and this is what I'd like to change from the script, and it was all very compelling.
Within 1 minute of the conversation with him, I knew it was him. He was the filmmaker for this movie. He got it. It was in his DNA.
I was still early days of early parenthood, being totally terrified, nervous, trying to keep our daughter safe and keep our daughter alive already. So I thought, why not put all those ideas into a script?
One of the early discussions we had is, what does it mean to not make a sound? There's no way anyone can survive without making a sound.
Thinking about like the different set pieces that you could create, I mean, the idea is just kind of flooded in. We're both from Iowa originally, and so it felt very much like a story that could take place in our backyard. You have corn silos, you have barns that have to be soundproofed.
John called, he said, I found our location. We hadn't really been looking for the location. I mean, we were looking at photos, but we hadn't, we weren't in it that much. John is a force, and you want a guy like that to be directing your movie.
There were no cornfields, there were no silos. It was literally a red barn and the White House across the street, and right between was a highway where cars were doing 50, 60 miles an hour.
Nothing has been done here in a long time. By clearing it and stuff, we kind of brought it back to life, and the neighbors are all excited about it.
They had actually told us, if you don't plant your corn by a certain date, you're not gonna have cornfields. This is early for a movie to start doing stuff like this. We're not even in pre-production yet, but we have to plant our cornfields to get them up to 8 feet.
Put in vegetable garden. They had to put up a 70-foot silo, which I use a company called Penn Jersey to do. It has 2 roads. They close for us for the entire span of the film, which is 40 days. The local farmers were really terrific to work with. I like to shoot practically. That's how I've been throughout my career, building into a real environment. The director is able to see in a 360 world, and you find things in a true environment that you would never just find on stage.
Jeff and I talked about it a lot as a Western. It's kind of big and broad and epic, and it's not about feeding the audience with information, feeding them with dialogue. It's about living with this family. From every single shot, Jeff was hugely instrumental in that.
You get something different from an actor directing, I think, because they understand the world that they're in intimately, because they touch it.
When we first went in to speak with our producers, Platinum Dunes, about this project, and I remember saying, like, Emily Blunt would be a great type for this movie. We're not gonna get her, but, like, she'd be great for this movie.
Let's roll. Speed. 23 take 1. 10 walk on the nice and easy roll.
We had always talked about working together, but we didn't want the story of us being married to supersede whatever story we could tell. I didn't want to pressure her. If I asked her and she said no, I wasn't sure how that would go for my day. And if I asked her and she said yes to help me out or do me a favor, that wouldn't go well either. I just didn't say anything. As I was pitching her ideas that I was writing in the script, she started listing actresses that she thought would be really good for the part. And then one day we were on a plane together and she said, "Do you mind if I read the script?"
John was flying out to pitch the movie to the president of Paramount. 20 minutes before the meeting, he says, "Emily read the script on the plane."
I'll never forget, she turned to me and she looked sick. "You can't let anyone else do this movie." And I truly didn't know what she meant.
And then I might come down a little bit, you know, when I have that.
I have been witness to exactly what it takes to get my wife to commit to a movie. It was the greatest compliment of my career.
Is that and action?
I felt more protected on this because he was at the helm of it.
But she was off shooting Mary Poppins when I was doing Jack Ryan, and we know different crews and we have different experiences. And the weirdest thing about being in the same business is you actually don't have any idea what the other person's doing. You'd think we would. I had always known she was smart. I always knew she was creative and had good ideas. I got to experience my wife in a whole different way.
We were scared, like we were nervous to work together. I thought maybe we'd kill each other, you know. But actually it was kind of amazing. I've always felt valued as his wife and mother of his kids, but I felt so valued creatively. We were so on the same page. I'm not crying, it's just the sun, I promise.
It's okay. You're safe. They can't hear us. You just need to rest now.
Where are they?
Casting husband and wife to play husband and wife, casting Millie, a deaf girl, to play a deaf girl, there's an authenticity there that you wouldn't normally get.
It was the first time on a movie we didn't have lists, we didn't have auditions, there was no one to test. He kind of just came to us and said, "I like Millicent for Regan. Noah Jupe, who was just coming off Suburbicon at Paramount, should be Marcus." That's how clearly he saw the movie.
I always knew I wanted a deaf actress. That was non-negotiable. I wanted a guide through this experience. I didn't want to pretend. I didn't want to put my own spin on it because I don't really know what that is.
When I first was able to read the script for A Quiet Place, I was very drawn to it, very fascinated from the beginning to the end. And of course, I do like horror movies and stories of that sort. At first, I read it through a little bit slowly. I took my time, but it definitely started to become a little bit more appealing, and I feel as though I could start to relate to the character, Regan.
Finding Millie is one of the best things that ever happened to this movie. Unintimidated, she would say, "This is how this scene would be, and this is sort of how we'd communicate. You know, don't is this, and that's why we do it."
Millicent can't look off screen, so someone has to be in her eye line that's signing to her, and then there's another person there to make sure that all the signing is correct.
Regan started hating herself. She really hated herself for being deaf. And I could kind of relate to some of those feelings as a deaf individual when I was a lot younger. It was very challenging to me, comparing myself to hearing people, or I guess you could say, quote unquote, normal people. And I thought, why am I deaf? Why was I born deaf? So I could relate to those emotions from when I was much younger, and I could use those to inform my character's emotions and decisions, but at first it was definitely a challenge.
It's really incredible watching her work. John would be giving her notes. Millie would be looking at John for the intention of what he meant, and then she'd just glance to his side to see the real translation. It was just remarkable watching her.
On a movie, like with dialogue, like if you want to add a line here and there, like on the set, you could just change a line. Like, you know what, that's not working, let's go with this. You know, with the ASL, John and Emily Noah would have to learn the sign. Noah, who plays her brother, really mastered the craft and was able to really communicate with her. It was pretty crazy to watch.
Sign is very straightforward. Because I'm not fluent in sign and I'm still learning, we kind of cut out all the boring nonsense that normal friends do, and we're just getting straight down to the honesty and real questions. So that's probably why we've bonded really well.
Noah started picking it up quite a bit, and I taught him some sign language, and him and I just communicate just very smoothly now. We became very good buddies. And when he would change into character as Marcus, that change created a little bit of a distance. It created a little bit of a quietness between us. And it was a little bit odd when that would happen.
Kids who can really act, they can just really do it. The air shifts in the room when they do what they do.
Noah was a night manager, and I thought he did such a great job. I did the next logical thing, which is reach out to George Clooney, who had just worked with him in Suburbicon. I remember the quote from George was, however many hours you've planned on your day, shave an hour off, because he's actually gonna save you time. The problem will be you. You'll need more takes than he does. And he's absolutely right. This kid just, same as Millie, just knocked it out of the park.
Whoa! Let me know when you're giving acting lessons. I'll sign up first.
It's really hard for a kid to actually access fear.
Never stop fighting, even as you're going under. But then when I cut to this top shot of you, I can have your hand go boom.
They both do some scenes in this that just sort of blow your hair back.
We've made a lot of horror movies where the people who are getting killed are just kind of collateral damage. And we didn't want to have a family here that was collateral damage. We want to have a family that people actually cared about.
It was absolute agony watching them say goodbye to each other when the process ended, because they just became siblings. They became desperately close.
When you grow up in that environment, playing Monopoly, but you can't make a noise when you're playing Monopoly, and having to go outside but walk on sand paths, like, those are all fascinating things that these kids probably take for granted. Until, of course, a new sibling starts entering the world through the pregnancy, and then all hell breaks loose.
How we pulled off all the tension was really Emily and I sitting around saying, if this happened, and if we were in this room, and that thing was over there, Emily was like, I don't even want to think about it. And I was like, it's going in the script. There had to be a shift in the day. It was always the nail and the idea that whatever was happening with her was happening now. One take exists of that shot. She just let it rip. The crew went dead silent. On the take, you can hear me at the very end waiting probably 10 seconds, and then I say, that's lunch? Like, what do you do after that?
What I love most about this movie is that it doesn't show all its cards. To be a part of something that's got that feeling of courage about it, that people feel an endless anxiety attack watching. I want to be a part of that movie.
Everyone sees it differently. I feel like this is a father's story, protecting your family. Millicent's story of forgiving her father.
That idea of how far you would go resonated powerfully with us both.
Evelyn's not giving up. She's going to bring life into this world. Life is not over for her.
I always saw this as like a sweater that unravels. You go with your gut instinct and you go with what feels right. Every single crew member, from our production designer to our DP to our editor, it just felt like everyone was on board from the very beginning. I do feel really, really lucky that it all came together the way it did.